All right, well, welcome everybody to the February 2026 Radius Community Meeting. Very excited to have you all here and thank you for joining. My name is Will. I'm one of the maintainers of the Radius project, and I'll be running the community meeting today. So let's make sure we have this, have an interactive meeting. So this is a meeting for you, for the community. Everybody is on mute by default when you join, but if you raise your hand and want to have a question and want to, get on the microphone, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can jump in to ask your question. We also have several Radius maintainers and contributors from the community in the chat as well. So definitely feel free to use the chat to ask your questions asynchronously as well, and somebody will go in and answer your questions. And we also have a Discord, so I guess this is for the recording. If you have a question after watching the recording and you want to ask the community a question or the maintainers a question, feel free to head over to our Discord channel. Today's agenda, we will run through a couple of roadmap updates, and I'll talk about the latest features and functionality in our most recent release. And then we're very excited to welcome Philippe from Millennium BCP in Portugal to give us a preview demo of the Radius Headlamp plugin that they have built. So we'll be able to see a preview of that and get sort of an update on that work, and then hopefully it'll get merged in soon where everybody can go take advantage of the new plugin in Headlamp. So with that, I'll just do a quick walkthrough of our roadmap. So just a reminder that our Radius roadmap is publicly available in the Radius GitHub repository. Here's a short link for you to be able to go access the roadmap. And if you're familiar with Radius, you'll see, various swim lanes. The ones I've shown here in the screenshot are accepted, designing, and developing. Pretty straightforward. Accepted is basically our accepted backlog of items. And then designing are things that we are prototyping with or still in sort of designing phase. And then developing are items that are actively under development and that you can expect to be available in an upcoming release. So a couple of highlights from our roadmap this month. Coming soon, I mentioned earlier, the Radius plugin for Headlamp. We'll get a preview of this from Philippe, but this one is in review. The PR is in review with the Headlamp maintainers. We're contributing, or rather Philippe is contributing the Radius plugin into the Headlamp code base. So once that gets merged in, everybody will be able to use it if you're part of the Headlamp ecosystem, or if you just want to try it out, you can head over to the Headlamp site to get started. So hopefully that'll be merged in here in the next, I'm guessing, days or weeks. And then under development, we have a couple of things that are nearing completion. And I'm hoping that in the next community call or two, we'll start rolling out some of these functionalities in upcoming releases. First is compute platform extensibility. For those of you who've joined a couple of calls already, a couple of the Radius community calls, you'll know that we've been working on kind of a big project to make core resources within Radius extensible. So that means containers, secrets, volumes, gateways or routes, as we call them now. Those are today kind of hard-coded, or rather, hard-coded really into the Radius imperative code, meaning that you can't drive those resource types using recipes. So you can't customize the container resource type, for example, by bringing your own recipes for those. Compute platform extensibility will address that and make those core resources recipe drivable. So you can bring your own recipes for core resources. And then along with that work, we're releasing recipe packs, which is a new way to bundle recipes so that you can manage groupings of recipes much easier. And instead of registering individual recipes to environments, you'll register them as packs or bundles, and that just makes them more convenient to manage. And then lastly, the last highlight I wanted to touch on are advanced Terraform settings. We're working on a project to extract out Terraform settings into its own resource type, and which will allow you to manage your Terraform settings for Radius as a dedicated resource type so that it can have its independent lifecycle and just lends to a more scalable way of managing and customizing your Terraform settings. And with that, you'll be able to have a customizable Terraform backend. So you'll be able to bring your own Terraform backend and not always rely on the default one that Radius has hard-coded into the code base today. So some exciting stuff, mostly around extensibility coming to Radius, and we're excited that these things will make Radius all that much more extensible and kind of grow the footprint of the Radius resource types pattern that we introduced a couple months back. And then designing and prototyping wise, we're working on kind of 3 projects that are pretty exciting, and these are going to be extensively prototyped and still in this kind of like experimentation phase, if you will, because these are kind of drastically new functionality that we're looking to add to Radius. And the first one that I'll talk about is the Git repo as a Radius data store. So today, if you're familiar with the internals of Radius, you'll know that Radius runs in a container. Basically you have to run the Radius control plane and in a dedicated container or dedicated cluster. And there's a state store within the cluster that stores all the Radius state coming out of the deployments. We're looking to find ways to be able to externalize the state store into the repo itself so that we can actually run Radius in more of like an ephemeral or an on-demand mode. So you don't have to have a long-running server or in the cluster running at all times, the control plane running at all times. We're trying to figure out if there's a way to have Radius spin up and spin down on demand and reduce the reliance on a long-standing server that hosts the control plane. So we're experimenting with that, and we'll probably in the next community meeting or 2, we might have some demos to previews to show of the experimentation we have on that. Second one is auto resource types, recipes, and applications. So this one is our way of kind of leaning into the whole AI assisted development explosion that's really happened in the past couple of months. And we're experimenting with ways that we can build tooling to better leverage AI to help you discover and create resource types, recipes, and even build and compile or put together your applications based on what you have in your infrastructure, what you have in your repo, and what you have in your kind of infrastructure policies. So with this, the idea is users of Radius will be able to use this so that they don't have to mentally kind of worry about setting up resource types, setting up recipes, and doing all those upfront kind of very expensive investment activities before they are able to use Radius. So hopefully this will help with some of that entry point and smooth some of that that onboarding into Radius with the help of AI. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit about the Git-centric app graph. So for those of you who are familiar, Radius, one of the major benefits of using Radius to model and deploy your applications is that you end up with this very rich app graph that shows you connections between interdependencies of your applications. So you can get really a graph or architectural view of how your application is pieced together, how all the individual resources that make up your application are pieced together. And we're looking to enhance that a lot more with the app graph visualizations and layering. The idea is to layer Git, the Git change log on top of the app graph so that you can get these like rich over time views of how the app graph has evolved. And then on top of that, build integrations with GitHub. We'll probably experiment with running GitHub Actions to do render visualizations of the app graph directly within GitHub. So the idea is, say you create a PR to make an architectural change to your application, you'd be able, once you commit and check in a commit into your branch in the PR, you should be able to see your app graph, your changed app graph as like a code change, like in the code change view of GitHub. But instead of just lines of code, red and green lines of code showing the changes, you'll have side-by-side renderings of the before and after app graph. So we're hoping to experiment around with this and be able to kind of make the app graph more useful in the development scenarios. And we'll start with this like Git-centric view within GitHub. So all three currently, like I said, under prototyping and experimentation. We'll share more as we learn more, and definitely share some demos of what we've been able to build in the next community calls. So with that, I'll move on to release updates. So we released 0.54 about a month ago, or maybe even a little over a month ago. 0.55 is currently going through the release process right now, but I'll update you on 5.4 for today. So with release 5.4, we actually have a new contributor, and the new contributor actually is on the call today, Philippe, who will be walking us through the Headlamp stuff later. But very grateful and excited to have you as officially as a contributor to Radius in the past release. So in 54, it was all about fixing a lot of the usability kind of rough edges that have been plaguing Radius for a bit. One of these is the rad credential show command. Previously, an error always was thrown when you do rad credential show Azure due to a null pointer dereference when attempting to display Azure credentials. This has been fixed as a part of release 0.54, and now you'll actually get your Azure credentials displayed if you've configured any when you run this command. So a very nice fix of the usability, and this is certainly something I used to run into quite a bit and frustrated me quite a bit when I was developing apps for Azure. So very excited to see this come out. Next usability improvement was rad workspace show. So again, another fixing of errors when, and in this case, it's a true error scenario. So if you do a rad workspace show, but there's actually no workspace to display, previously the error message wasn't really helpful. And we've fixed this to show a more user-friendly error message when no workspace is currently set. So instead of returning just a generic error, the command now logs an informational message to guide the user around how to create a workspace, maybe pointing to the documentation instead of just throwing kind of a generic error when the workspace doesn't exist. So for both of these changes, feel free to go check out our CLI docs for more details on the experience for these, but we're super excited to have these usability issues addressed. So with that, we conclude our regular updates, and I'll hand it over to our guest, Philippe from Millennium BCP, who will walk us through a demo of the Radius plugin for Headlamp.
Thanks, Will. So, hi everyone from sunny, today not so sunny Lisbon, from Portugal. And the story for us here at Millennium BCP is that we wanted to have a place to see all our applications, but we also wanted to have Headlamp as our de facto Kubernetes UI. And joining both great worlds together, we help the community out and trying to put out the plugin for Radius for Headlamp. As Will said, is days, weeks from coming out. We're talking with the Headlamp guys, and I see that we have also here Joaquin, who's also one of the maintainers of Headlamp, to get this plugin out as soon as possible. With that, I'm gonna show you really small sneak preview of all the features that we've already implemented on the plugin. So let me grab the screen share. So we see some potential, or really great potential on the Radius dashboard. But if we want one unified UI, that's where we get Headlamp. In this demo, I'll show you guys, it has the tutorial that you'll find on Radius documentation. So one application, one environment, and also one custom resource type that I've created for this demo. So as you guys have on the Radius dashboard, you'll see your application or in your environments, and also added some notifications on how many of your environments are with success, applications, and resources. So if we go to the environments, you'll see an overview. You'll see the recipes that are registered with that environment. So these ones are the default ones that come with Radius, and also the resources that were created for this environment. Again, for the applications, and you'll get all the links from one type of resources to another. So on the applications, we can go back to the environments and so on. On the applications, you'll see the rest of the resources. So the container with all the properties that you also see on Radius dashboard, and all the resources that were deployed by the type, by the status, application and environment. And one of the latest releases of Radius, the custom resources. You'll see all the custom resource types that are on Radius, and you can also see the ones that you deployed. So if on the Radius documentation, you'll see a PostgreSQL database custom resource type. This is the one that I've deployed it right here, and I can see the overview, the properties, and the outputs properties from this resource type, and also all the details in plain JSON. And this, I only have one version, but if we had multiple versions of this resource type, you'll see all the versions on the list. So yeah, it was really awesome to share with you guys. Hopefully it will be out really soon. We still have more features to add as Radius grows up. You'll see more things on Radius, and we're here to help out this awesome Radius team to add the new features to the Headlamp plugin. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much for walking us through that, Philippe. Really cool to see it all come together, and the UI is quite beautiful on the Headlamp plugin. Looks really nice. All right. So yeah, that was a great demo. And oh, I see Brooke is has his hand up, so I'm going to allow your mic, Brooke, so you can.
Hey, that was a really good demo. Do you have some advice for us on how we could try out the plugin? I know it's not merged yet, but is that something we could test?
You can change to the branch. So the PR is open, is the 461 on the Headlamp plugins repo. So you can grab that branch and just do npm start and try it out on your machine.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
And then I imagine when that PR is merged, it'll the Radius plugin will be available in the Headlamp kind of plugin marketplace, or like
Yeah.
And you can just enable it through there.
Yeah, it will be deployed on Artifactor Hub, and you can get it as, if I'm not mistaken, as an official Headlamp plugin from the store. Yeah, Joaquin is
Awesome.
helping out saying that it will be on the official ones.
Awesome. Okay, that's perfect. So once the PR gets merged, folks can go in, stand up their own instance of their Headlamp dashboard, and then add the Radius plugin. Fantastic. All right. Well, any other questions for Philippe? Great. Thanks again for your contribution and for walking us through here today. Super excited for it. All right. Well, before we close out, I'm going to just share a couple of resources for those of you new to Radius, or those of you watching the recording who are new to Radius. We have a couple of getting started guides here in this link on the left-hand side. The tutorial is a very comprehensive guide running you through all the various scenarios within Radius, and walks you through a lot of the major topics and concepts in Radius. And then the link on the right-hand side here is just a reshare of our roadmap. And with that, we'll move into Q&A. So like I said before, you can ask questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, and you can ask your question via your microphone. So with that, we'll conclude, and I'll just leave this slide up while we wait for questions with additional resources and places you can go to learn more and keep connected with the Radius community. Thank you for joining, and the Radius maintainers will stick around for a bit, for a few minutes, for any questions or discussions. Thank you all. Yes, Kevin, you can ask questions via chat, but I will enable your microphone if you want to ask it via voice as well. All right,
Hello.
Kevin, I think, yes.
Yes, I have a silly question, to be honest, and it's something that's been confusing me since I saw a Radius announcement 2 years ago, I believe, from Brendan Burns and Mark Rusinovich. I'm a little bit confused on like the unique value proposition of Radius when compared to Terraform. So I know that Terraform is now like a resource provider for Radius, and it definitely fills a lot of gaps that Bicep and ARM have, but I'm not clear on exactly what it's offering uniquely to Terraform itself.
Yeah, so I think you're right in Terraform is a resource provider for Radius, or rather, like Radius has a Terraform driver. So you can bring Terraform recipes and Radius can execute your Terraform deployments or your deployments via Terraform through recipes, Terraform modules that are packaged up as Radius recipes. When you compare them, like when you compare Terraform to Radius, the major thing to kind of understand is Radius isn't meant to necessarily replace your Terraform. If you have a bunch of Terraform modules set up already, it's meant to complement it. And the idea is Terraform is infrastructure concerns, right? Radius is more of Radius is also infrastructure concerns, but in a more app-centric way. Terraform is just purely kind of infrastructure focused, right? And the idea is when you want to build an application, we want to give developers a way to think about like resources in their development cycle and think about apps and resources rather than infrastructure, right? So Radius provides a way for you to front all your infrastructure with kind of a set of like APIs, if you will, to build your application so that you don't have to make all those infrastructure decisions and learn all the infrastructure stuff upfront if as a developer. All that can be done separately. And it's this separation of concern that's really one of the value props of Radius.
Thank you.
I don't know, Zach, if you have other things to add there.
Yeah, let me show you a diagram, Kevin. Great question.
Thank you.
Oh, one sec. So one second. Sorry, this has a customer name in it. I don't want to. Okay. Sorry about that. I just had a name in the file name. So I drew this diagram recently. Maybe this will help you out. And you could think about, the goal of Radius is, like Will was saying, was really to abstract away the infrastructure from the application and the application definition. So if I go look at, a bunch of application repos in GitHub, a lot of them are going to have like an infrastructure folder, and it's going to have like, a main.tf in there, a couple of environment, files, things like that. What we're trying to do is abstract that away and build a means to define your application. I'm calling it an application model. Define your application in a way that's abstracted from the actual underlying infrastructure. And so Terraform absolutely plays a role here. It's just down here. And so basically, like, you could think about this as Radius giving you the ability to model your application in an abstract way. And this is kind of above this dashed line is kind of the developer interface. So above the line, right? And so this is your abstraction. And then Radius has a concept of environments and these resource types. And these are the resource types. This resource type is the abstract resource type. And then the recipe connects that abstract resource type with, an actual cloud infrastructure. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Right. So this right here, this ingress recipe in this example would be your Terraform module. Right. And that Terraform module, sets up something on, front door, or, over here on Kubernetes, a gateway, a gateway route. Right. But all the while you have this abstract just ingress resource type. Does that picture help at all?
It does help, I think. So I've spoken to some Terraform experts internally at Microsoft, and they were also a bit confused about this when I showed them Radius. I personally, like, small feedback from me would be to highlight how these work a little bit more, because I think if you're really, really familiar with Terraform, it kind of hesitant
Sure,
to
you squint.
try
You're like,
Radius.
what's going on here? Like, why do I need all this? Right.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to get it, but I'm still a little bit fuzzy, to be honest. So maybe some.
So basically, you
some
think
more
about it like, I bet one of your repos today has, like, for your application, it probably has your source code for the app, and it probably has like a main.tf in it today. Fair?
Yeah. Yes, completely.
With Radius, you wouldn't have any Terraform in the code repo itself. So
Right.
the code, the application source code, and the application model, or anything that talks about service, database, ingress, whatever, is going to be abstracted. And
Right,
and
and
it'll
that's
be
for the
abstracted.
recipes.
No, it won't even have recipes. It'll just have these abstract resource types. It'll just say,
Okay.
like, ingress and a service or container and a database. And in that repo, it's not going to have anything that has nothing to do with Terraform, nothing to do with Azure, nothing to do with Kubernetes or AWS. That's the bottom line. Like, you just remove all of that from your code repo.
That helps
I think
a lot.
Key to it is the Radius environments, right? The Radius environment is the logical grouping of which recipes drive which resource types. And then the developer just points their application, their Radius modeled application, to an environment during deployment, and then the Radius takes whatever recipes are configured in that environment and deploys the resources per what the recipe configurations are per environment. So the idea is all these environments are pre-set up, right? Before the app is even built and developed, the platform engineers figure out, okay, these are all the resource types that we expect our developers to use. These are the relevant recipes or respective recipes that drive each resource type based on the environment it's in.
Oh, there you're back. Okay. We lost you for a
okay.
second there, Will, I think.
Okay, sorry. So basically, environments drive recipes registered to each environment, and then that's done separately from the application development lifecycle.
Thank you. Yeah. That's made it a lot more clear what both of you just said. Thank you. Yeah. That's helped a lot. The platform engineering aspect really clears this up, because I was assuming that as a Radius user, like currently in my situation, I would write everything myself. And that's where the benefits don't seem super clear to me. But you're saying you can share these environments out. You have one centralized team. Yes, that makes a lot more sense.
Exactly. In fact, when we build a lot of our demos, we have all these environments pre-set up already, and like, I can just write a new demo and throw it into an environment and be able to see it deploy. And that's the value that Radius provides.
Thank you very much. This helps a lot. I'm gonna provide this in my next pitches about using Radius.
Awesome. Yeah, and feel free to contact us.
Put that
with
that
any
slide and put it in here.
Oh, sorry, Zach. We lost you for a little bit.
Oh, I just say I got a screenshot of this slide. I'll put it in the.
Okay, perfect.
Chat.
Awesome. Good questions, Kevin. So feel free to reach back out to us if you have any additional follow-ups. All right. Anything else? All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll stop the recording now.